Welcome back to WDRB Media, the voice of the community. And those streaming live through the free TuneIn Radio app, Streamer, Apple Music, Radio Seed, and more. You're listening to Let's Speak It Out Loud, and I am your fantabulous host, Goddess Candace the Alicorn. If you're just tuning in, we're discussing reclaiming Indigenous Aboriginal American identity, truth buried by design. All right? So listen, Soul Tribe. You need to understand that in 1894, listen to these dates. In 1894, the U.S. Board of Geographic Names declared Indian and Negro as interchangeable identifiers in federal documents. Did you hear what I said? In 1894, the U.S. Board of Geographic Names declared Indian and Negro as interchangeable identifiers in federal documents. An intentional act of cultural misrepresentation to blur the bloodlines of the indigenous tribes of America. Also, the Rockefeller-funded textbooks followed suit in 1913, introducing curriculum that erased Aboriginal identity and replaced it with the slave narrative. Did you hear me? I'm going to say it again for those in the back. Rockefeller, J.D. Rockefeller funded textbooks. You know, he created the educational system. Followed suit by 1913, introducing curriculum that erased Aboriginal identity and replaced it with a slave narrative. By the 1920s, Hollywood joined in, cementing the false memory through films like Uncle Tom's Cabin and later Roots. I'm a child of Roots. You know, they played that after school every single day when I was in elementary school. Chicken George, Kizzy, all of that. This wasn't entertainment. It was a ritual of rewriting, convincing the true descendants of Turtle Island that they were from somewhere else entirely. They called us Negro to deny us our tribal inheritance. They wrote us out to write others in. But beneath this fiction stands the truth. We are the Aboriginal indigenous tribes of America, the spiritual architects of this land. Our traditions, they didn't vanish. They were silenced. Our names weren't lost. They were buried. And now through ritual, records, and resistance, we rise. So let's talk about the first tactic that the European immigrant settlers used to try to switch the narrative here. So they used this first tactic to try to take us away from our sacred land, Turtle Island. So between the late 1500s and early 1600s, members of the indigenous tribes were taken to Europe as indentured servants. I know that for a fact because my wife has studied her genealogy and her family was among them. They are the true Navajo. You're like, what? I know Navajos. Listen, they are the true Navajo. And they eventually found their way back to Georgia. Yet, they claim you brought us here on massive slave ships in 1619 with thousands of us locked in the bottom of a ship. For months. The technology to build such ships, they didn't exist at this time. Also, the ocean gyres would have destroyed the ships during the so-called voyage. This narrative severs the connection to our true lineage of who we really are. You're not forgotten. You were never lost. You are Aboriginal. We are indigenous. I need y'all to do the work. Before you come hollering at me, she don't know what she talking about. Do the work. Investigate it for yourself. Trace your own ancestral light. Find your truth. It's all in the records, y'all. Investigate your family for yourself. You might be surprised or maybe not. Mainstream historians, they place Navajos in the Southwest like Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Colorado. But many family testimonies and oral traditions, they say otherwise. Some were never removed. They were merely renamed colored or Negro. Just a paper trail disguised as an extermination ritual in my mind. That's what it looks like to me. The paper trail was straight extermination. The Indian Removal Act of 1830, it forced many southeastern tribes westward, including the Creek, the Cherokee, the Navajo, as well as many affiliated clans. Some Navajo descendants, their families remained in Georgia. They were hidden under the label of colored or Negro or now African American on the census and land deeds. Aboriginal Navajo lineages, they existed in the Southeast, including Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina way, way long before any European arrival. So let me tell you something about my family. See, My mother, who was 81 years old and of very sound mind, she told me that when she first met my father's grandmother in 1971 in Littleton, North Carolina, the phenomenal matriarch of that side of my family, Mrs. Helena Harris, you might want to look her up. My great-grandmother, she asked my mother if they called her black. My mother said yes. And then great-grandma Helena, then she asked her, you're not black, you're Indian. My mother replied, yes. All of our ancestors knew and know who we are. So let me take you to Reidsville, Rockingham County in North Carolina, where my mother was born. Her voice, it carries the echoes of the Dan River ancestors, the true stewards of the land before the 1400s. These lands, Reidsville and Littleton, they're more than geography for me. They're sacred ground. They hold the footprints of my matriarchs, my elders, my unwritten histories, and I am their voice. Rockingham County and Littleton or Reidsville, they're not just accidental coordinates. They're sacred markers of clans that refuse to disappear. We speak their names. We reclaim their geographies. For we are the Aboriginal Indigenous tribes of America, and our stories will be silenced no more. So let's not forget the names that were silenced, the lands that were stolen, and the identities that were rewritten. Let's speak our truths out loud, not as echoes of the past, but as declarations of the present, to the undying honor as the true Aboriginal tribes of America. My grandmother, Nanny Waddell, my mother's mother, was born 1912 in Rockingham County, North Carolina, and passed away at 107 in 2019. She always told me that saying your tribal name was illegal when she was a child. Rockingham County, North Carolina, and our lineage and land ownership predates 1619. She said, we're not Africans. She used to tell me that all the time when I was in college. You getting dumb going to those schools. We're not Africans. We've never been to Africa. We're from right here and have always been here. Tribal naming was illegal. That's a truth that cuts deep for me. That's not folklore. That's documented cultural suppression enforced by policies designed to disconnect us from our bloodlines and bury sovereign memory beneath colored, Negro, and black, now African American. We are none of these names. We've never been and never will be. These are simply social constructs that continue to perpetuate the lies, okay? Thank you for joining me on this journey of truth, of reclamation, of sovereignty. Again, identity is not given. It's remembered, unearthed, and reclaimed. May my love serve as a roadmap to reclaiming sovereignty, unearthing truth, and uplifting every soul. I appreciate you rising with me, and thank you for listening to this vessel's vibration that flows deeper than words. Ashe, and so it is. May the ancestors rise in your steps. You've been tuned in to Let's Speak It Out Loud radio show, and I am your fantabulous host, Goddess Candace the Alicorn, on WDRB Media, the voice of the community, for double the information and inspiration. Until next week, speak your truth like morning light, unapologetic, necessary, and divine. You are worthy and you are worth it, Soul Tribe. Peace.